You see him there, a gaunt form of what was once a sturdy German shepherd mix, his dark brown and black fur matted with grime and burrs, his once proud tail usually tucked low. He limps slightly on his left hind leg, a souvenir from a forgotten tangle with a bicycle in a busy intersection. His eyes, though, are what truly pierce you. A deep, intelligent brown, shadowed by weariness, yet holding an unwavering flicker of watchful resilience, reflecting the cold, indifferent gleam of the city's asphalt. This isn't just any stray. This is Asher, a creature who has known only the harsh, unforgiving pavement as home, yet carries a profound spirit that you won't believe. His story is about to unfold, a testament to how even the most overlooked among us can become the keeper of another's soul and transform an entire life. Before you dive into the story, hit like and subscribe if you love dogs. And tell us in the comments what makes your furry friend special, or a favorite dog story that touched your heart. The city, with its towering concrete canyons and ceaseless roar, was Asher's brutal kingdom. He was born into its underbelly, a tiny pup hidden beneath a rusty fire escape, learning early that survival was a solitary, relentless pursuit. Every day was a masterclass in evasion, dodging speeding taxis, avoiding hurried pedestrians, and outmaneuvering bigger, meaner strays. He knew the precise moments a diner's back door might open for a discarded scrap, the routes of garbage trucks, and the scarce patches of warmth near subway grates. His world was defined by the relentless pursuit of food and shelter, a constant ballet of hunger and vigilance. You'd often see him, a fleeting shadow, melting into the urban landscape, a testament to his uncanny ability to be both present and invisible. Honestly, if I could get paid for this kind of stealth, I'd be rich, he might have thought, if dogs pondered finances. His loneliness was profound, a constant ache in his large, bony frame. He watched the humans, a bewildering array of bustling figures rushing to and fro, always connected, always interacting. He saw the affectionate pats, the shared laughter, the comforting brush of a hand against a pet's fur. He longed for such a connection, a familiar voice, a steady touch. But he was a street dog, an outcast, a ghost in the urban machine. His interactions with humans were fleeting, often hostile. A shouted, "Shoo!" here, a thrown pebble there. He learned to expect nothing, to hope for little, and to rely only on himself. This was a unique, emotional moment, this quiet, philosophical acceptance of his solitude, yet with a deep, unspoken yearning for belonging. Asher had honed his senses to an almost supernatural degree. His nose could pick up the faint scent of a dropped hot dog wrapper from blocks away, and his ears, large and expressive, could distinguish the anxious chatter of a squirrel from the ominous rumble of an approaching garbage truck. Dogs possess an olfactory sense that is exponentially more powerful than a human's, allowing them to detect minute traces of chemicals and substances, and even interpret subtle changes in human emotion through scent. This acute awareness was his lifeline, his early warning system against the myriad dangers of the streets. One afternoon, as the scent of an approaching storm filled the air, that specific petrichor mixed with ozone, Asher instinctively sought shelter. Moments later, the sky opened up, a torrential downpour washing the streets clean and drowning out the city's ceaseless roar. Asher, tucked beneath a derelict bus stop bench, merely blinked, his wet fur plastered to his body, grateful for his honed instincts. His nights were spent curled in the meager shelter of alleyways, beneath rickety stairwells, or in the hollowed-out remnants of abandoned cars. Sleep was rarely deep, always punctuated by the distant wail of sirens or the skittering of rats. Dreams, when they came, were fleeting glimpses of warmth and a comforting human presence, quickly snatched away by the harsh reality of waking up to cold concrete and the ever-present gnawing of hunger. He carried no bitterness, not truly. Just a quiet, enduring weariness, a deep-seated desire for rest and a place to truly belong. Will such a profoundly lonely existence ever find the warmth and connection it yearns for? Or is some hope simply too fragile for the unforgiving streets? Asher's daily survival routine often intersected with the city's own meticulous, if often futile, attempts at cleanliness. His path frequently crossed that of Mr. Arthur Finch, the grim-faced street sweeper. Mr. Finch was a creature of habit, his existence as solitary and predictable as Asher's. Every morning, precisely at dawn, he would emerge from the old city depot, pushing his battered, heavy-duty push broom, its bristles worn from years of sweeping away the city's discarded remnants. His route took him through the grimy back alleys and industrial zones, often intersecting with Asher's foraging grounds. Mr. Finch was a man built of sharp angles and perpetually pursed lips. His uniform, a faded blue jumpsuit, seemed to absorb the city's dust, making him blend into the background like another overlooked monument of urban decay. He rarely made eye contact with anyone, his gaze fixed on the ground, seemingly determined to sweep away not just the physical debris, but also the very soul of the streets. His face was a mask of stoic indifference, softened only by the faint lines of a profound, unspoken weariness around his eyes. He moved with a methodical precision, each sweep of his broom a deliberate, almost angry rejection of the city's endless mess. Asher and Mr. Finch had an unspoken, almost ritualistic dance. Asher would often be scavenging a promising-looking dumpster when Mr. Finch's distinctive rhythmic swish-swish of the broom would approach. Asher would immediately melt into the shadows, his dark brown and black fur making him almost invisible against the grimy walls. Mr. Finch, for his part, rarely acknowledged Asher's presence. If he did, it was with a curt huff, perhaps a slight acceleration of his broom strokes, a clear, if silent, command for Asher to vacate his territory. It was an initial indifferent, almost hostile encounter repeated daily. One might think, well, this is a friendship blossoming, isn't it? Asher, with his keen observational skills, quickly learned Mr. Finch's routine. He knew the precise turns, the moments Mr. Finch would pause for a sip of lukewarm coffee from his thermos, the times he would lean against a lamppost, lost in thought. Asher would watch him from a distance, curious about this human who seemed as solitary as he was. He saw the same weary resignation in Mr. Finch's posture that he often felt in his own bones. There was a unique emotional moment, a silent recognition between two lonely souls, each a shadow moving through the city. Mr. Finch held a particular disdain for anything that disrupted his meticulous routine. A sudden gust of wind scattering newly swept leaves, a careless pedestrian dropping litter right after he'd passed, or a stray dog rummaging through his neatly piled rubbish. These were affronts to his carefully ordered world. Asher often heard him mutter under his breath, sharp, clipped words that seemed to be directed at the general chaos of existence. "Confound it," or "bloody mess," were common refrains, delivered with a frustrated grunt. He seemed to carry the weight of all the city's dirt on his hunched shoulders. One bitterly cold morning, as an icy wind whipped through the alleys, Mr. Finch paused his sweeping. His hands, even in thick gloves, looked red and chapped. He blew into them, a cloud of visible breath escaping. He then noticed Asher, huddled miserably in the meager shelter of a broken cardboard box, shivering uncontrollably. Asher's fur, usually a source of insulation, seemed utterly inadequate against the biting wind. Mr. Finch watched him for a long moment, his usual expressionless face betraying a flicker of something unreadable. Perhaps it was pity, perhaps just a fleeting recognition of shared misery. While dogs possess a fur coat, their ability to regulate body temperature can be challenged in extreme cold. making shelter and warmth critical for their survival, especially for older or underfed strays. He resumed his sweeping, but his gaze kept returning to the shivering German Shepherd mix. Asher, sensing the unusual scrutiny, remained still, his amber eyes fixed on the man. He wondered if this was the moment the old man would finally shoo him away for good, or worse. But Mr. Finch merely swept past, completing his section of the alley. As he turned to leave, however, Asher noticed something unusual. Near the base of the very dumpster Asher often scavenged, Mr. Finch had left a small, crumpled paper bag. It wasn't litter. It was deliberately placed. Asher waited until Mr. Finch was out of sight, then cautiously approached. Inside the bag was a half-eaten sandwich, still wrapped in wax paper. It was a simple offering, small and unassuming, but it was an offering nonetheless. Asher looked in the direction Mr. Finch had departed, a new kind of question in his weary eyes. Will this silent, unexpected gesture of kindness be a fleeting anomaly? Or the first crack in the man's hardened shell, promising a different kind of routine for them both? The half-eaten sandwich, discreetly left by Mr. Arthur Finch, became a silent testament to a new, unspoken routine between the lonely man and the weary dog. Asher devoured it, the unfamiliar taste of human generosity, a potent balm against the chill of the morning. From that day forward, the rusty bus stop bench, where Mr. Finch would pause for his coffee break, became a point of quiet convergence. Asher would wait, hidden in the shadows, his dark brown and black fur blending with the urban decay, until he saw the familiar figure of the street sweeper approach. Mr. Finch never looked directly at Asher as he placed a small, wrapped offering on the edge of the bench. Sometimes it was a leftover crust from his meager breakfast, sometimes a piece of slightly stale pastry he'd acquired. He'd simply set it down, take a long sip from his thermos, and then continue his sweeping, his face still a mask of gruff indifference. But Asher noticed the subtle changes. The offerings became more consistent, never missed. The pace of Mr. Finch's sweeping, once almost angry, now held a faint, almost imperceptible rhythm of routine, a grudging familiarity that began to feel comforting. It was a unique, emotional moment, this wordless exchange, built on unspoken understanding rather than overt displays of affection. "Well, isn't this cozy? We're practically pen pals now," Asher might have thought, eyeing his daily delivery. Asher, in turn, began to adjust his own routine. He would follow Mr. Finch from a distance, a silent, furry shadow. He observed the methodical rhythm of the broom, the way Mr. Finch meticulously cleared every gutter and corner. He noticed the surprising care with which the old man handled discarded items that weren't quite trash, like a dropped child's toy or a lost glove, placing them carefully aside rather than sweeping them into the refuse pile. Asher realized Mr. Finch wasn't just clearing the streets, he was trying to impose order on a chaotic world, a solitary battle against the relentless tide of urban detritus. This shared, silent routine was a peculiar form of companionship. There were no leashes, no spoken commands, no pats, just presence. Asher understood that this was Mr. Finch's way of showing something akin to care, a reluctant acknowledgement of his existence. He learned to differentiate the subtle variations in Mr. Finch's posture. A slightly more hunched back meant he was tired. A quicker pace meant he was feeling rushed. Dogs are exceptionally good at reading human body language, often interpreting subtle shifts in posture, gait, and facial tension to understand emotional states and intentions. This intuitive understanding allowed Asher to navigate their unwritten rules. One frigid morning, a sudden, sharp gust of wind tore a handful of loose papers from a recycling bin, scattering them across Mr. Finch's freshly swept patch of sidewalk. He stopped, a frustrated sigh escaping his lips, his shoulders slumping. He looked at the scattered papers, then at his broom, as if contemplating the futility of it all. "Asher, watching from behind a parked car, felt a pang of empathy. He knew that feeling, the endless, unwinnable battle against the city's relentless mess. Without thinking, Asher trotted out, gently nudging a piece of paper with his nose towards Mr. Finch's feet. He looked up at the old man, his amber eyes soft, as if offering help. Mr. Finch blinked, surprised by the dog's action. He looked down at the paper, then at Asher, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, perhaps a fleeting hint of amusement, or maybe just mild bewilderment. "Well, I'll be," he muttered, bending down to pick up the paper. Asher nudged another, then another, pushing them closer to the sweepers. "Honestly, buddy, teamwork makes the dream work," Asher might have thought, a tiny, almost imperceptible wag of his tail. Mr. Finch didn't say anything, but he didn't shoo Asher away either. He simply collected the papers, a strange, almost imperceptible softening around his perpetually grim mouth. As the weeks turned into months, their routine deepened. Asher would often lie quietly near Mr. Finch's resting spot, a silent guardian. Sometimes, Mr. Finch would even drop a piece of his apple, or a crust of bread, directly onto Asher's tongue, a brief, fleeting touch of fingers against fur. It was still a wary truce, a carefully maintained distance, but the underlying current of hostility had entirely dissipated. In its place, a fragile thread of mutual respect, perhaps even affection, had begun to form. Asher, the lonely street dog, had found an unexpected companion in the most unlikely of places, a gruff, solitary man who swept the city's streets. Will this quiet, unspoken bond ever break through the layers of Mr. Finch's isolation? Or will it remain a beautiful, yet perpetually distant, connection? The silent routine between Asher and Mr. Arthur Finch deepened with the changing seasons. Winter's biting winds gave way to the crisp, fresh air of spring, and the city, slowly, began to shed its gray layers for hints of green. Asher's dark brown and black fur, though still a bit shaggy, had gained a healthier sheen, a testament to the consistent, if covert, meals left by the street sweeper. His limp, too, seemed less pronounced, a slight hobble rather than a painful drag. He was stronger, healthier, and perhaps most importantly, less utterly alone. Mr. Finch continued his meticulous sweeping, his broom a rhythmic counterpoint to the city's waking sounds. He still rarely met Asher's gaze directly, but his movements around the German Shepherd mix were less abrupt, almost deferential. He'd pause a fraction longer when placing the small, wrapped offerings on the bench, and Asher noticed the faint, almost imperceptible softening around the corners of the old man's mouth. It was a unique, emotional moment, this quiet, blossoming tenderness from a man who had seemed perpetually hardened by life. "He's practically purring, if German shepherds could purr," Asher might have observed, feeling the warmth of the unspoken bond. One particularly warm spring afternoon, a sudden, torrential downpour erupted, turning the city streets into rushing rivers. Asher, caught off guard, scrambled for the nearest meager shelter, finding refuge under a leaky awning of an abandoned bookstore. He shivered, water soaking his fur, but he knew this was just part of street life. Mr. Finch, however, was still out on his route, pushing his broom through the deluge, his faded uniform plastered to his thin frame. Asher watched him, a familiar pang of empathy in his chest. The old man looked utterly miserable, his shoulders hunched against the relentless rain. Mr. Finch finally reached the bus stop bench where he usually took his break, his clothes dripping, his face a mask of discomfort. He slumped onto the bench, rubbing his arms, trying to generate some warmth. He pulled out his thermos, but his hands were shaking, making it difficult to unscrew the lid. He grunted in frustration, a sound Asher knew well. Asher, seeing the man's distress, felt an unfamiliar urge. He left the relative dryness of his awning and trotted hesitantly towards the bench, stopping a few feet away. He sat down, watching Mr. Finch, his amber eyes soft and concerned. Mr. Finch, sensing the presence, looked up, startled. His eyes, usually guarded, held a flicker of surprise, then something else. A deep weariness, a profound loneliness that mirrored Asher's own. He looked at the wet, solicitous dog, then back at his shaking hands. A sigh, heavy and laden with unseen burdens, escaped him.
"Can't even open a simple thermos, can I?"
He muttered to himself, his voice raw with frustration. It was in that moment, seeing the old man's vulnerability, that Asher did something he hadn't done since he was a pup with his first family. He slowly, carefully, walked forward and gently nudged his head against Mr. Finch's hand, offering a silent comfort. He didn't lick or paw. It was just a soft, steady pressure, a quiet presence. The touch was warm, slightly damp from the rain, but utterly sincere. Mr. Finch froze, his hand still on the thermos. He looked down at Asher, his eyes wide. A dog's touch, especially an unsolicited, gentle one, can have a profound, calming effect on humans, often lowering heart rates and reducing stress. Dogs are highly attuned to human distress and often respond with comforting behaviors, a testament to their innate empathy and capacity for connection. A small, choked sound escaped Mr. Finch's throat. He slowly, hesitantly, reached out his other hand and gently, almost reverently, stroked Asher's wet fur. It was a unique emotional moment, the very first intentional, sustained touch between them, a barrier crumbling in the relentless rain. Asher leaned into the touch, a deep, contented rumble vibrating in his chest, a sound Mr. Finch had never heard from him before. The old man sat there for a long moment, simply stroking the dog, the thermos forgotten. A single tear, perhaps from the cold, perhaps from a deeper, long-buried emotion, tracked a path down his weather-beaten cheek. You silly dog," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "What would I do without you?" It wasn't a question, but a profound realization. Will this physical touch, this unexpected show of vulnerability, finally break through the old man's lifelong solitude, leading to a deeper bond between the street sweeper and his silent companion? The rain-soaked afternoon had marked a profound shift in the silent routine shared by Asher and Mr. Arthur Finch. The physical touch, fleeting yet deeply impactful, had cracked open a tiny window into Mr. Finch's carefully constructed world of solitude. He still swept with his usual methodical determination, but now his gaze would occasionally soften when it landed on Asher, who often lay nearby, a watchful, comforting presence. The offerings of food became less a furtive placement and more a gentle offering, sometimes accompanied by a quiet, almost inaudible murmur. This unique emotional moment was a testament to the power of shared vulnerability, a connection forged in the unexpected shelter of a sudden downpour. Well, who knew a little rain could be so therapeutic? Asher might have pondered, feeling the warmth of the unspoken bond. As Asher spent more time observing Mr. Finch, not just his actions but his subtle emotional cues, he began to piece together the man's own profound loneliness. Mr. Finch rarely interacted with anyone beyond curt nods or the briefest of grumbles to fellow city workers. His apartment, which Asher sometimes glimpsed through a half-open window, was small, neat, and utterly devoid of personal touches or warmth. It smelled faintly of stale tea and unspoken sadness. The street sweeper lived a life as solitary as Asher's had once been, a quiet existence spent in the background of a bustling city, unnoticed by most. Asher noticed a particular pattern. Every Friday afternoon, Mr. Finch would pause his sweeping route at a specific, dilapidated park bench near a wilting rose bush. He would sit there for a long time, staring at the empty space beside him, his shoulders slumped, a deep, pervasive sorrow emanating from him. He carried a faint, bittersweet scent Asher recognized as grief, a smell he knew well from his own early days of abandonment. It was a haunting aroma, clinging to the old man like dust to his broom. Asher would sit a respectful distance away, a silent witness to Mr. Finch's private ritual, offering the only comfort he could: presence. Dogs are remarkably perceptive of human emotional states, often reacting to changes in posture, vocal tone, and even the release of stress hormones, allowing them to provide comfort or adjust their behavior accordingly. Asher recalled snippets of memories from his own past: a blurred image of a woman's face, a soft voice, the scent of a familiar home. Perhaps Mr. Finch had lost someone too, someone beloved, and this park bench was a memorial to a shared past. The old man's past experiences had clearly hardened him, building walls of stoicism and self-reliance, much like Asher had built his own walls of survival. They were two sides of the same coin, each burdened by loss, each navigating the world alone. "He's just like me, isn't he? Only with more wrinkles and a really big broom," Asher might have thought with a touch of gentle sarcasm. One particularly poignant Friday, as Mr. Finch sat on the bench, a single withered rose petal drifted from the bush and landed on his knee. He picked it up, turning it over in his rough fingers, his gaze distant. A deep sigh escaped him, a sound filled with profound sadness. Asher, unable to bear the quiet agony, slowly approached the bench. He laid his head gently on Mr. Finch's lap, a soft, heavy weight. Mr. Finch stiffened for a moment, then slowly, hesitantly, reached down and began to stroke Asher's dark brown and black fur. His hand paused, then continued, a rhythmic, comforting motion. It was a unique, emotional moment, a wordless commiseration between two solitary souls, each finding solace in the other's presence. Mr. Finch didn't speak, but Asher could feel the tremors running through the old man's body. He could smell the subtle changes in his scent, the release of tension, the faint, salty tang of unshed tears. Asher continued to press his head into the man's lap, a solid, grounding presence. He felt a profound connection, an understanding that transcended words. He was no longer just a recipient of kindness. He was a provider of comfort, a silent anchor in Mr. Finch's sea of sorrow. This was more than just a relationship between a man and a dog. It was two lost souls finding a fragment of solace in each other. As the sun began to set, painting the city skyline in hues of orange and purple, Mr. Finch slowly stood up, Asher still by his side. He looked down at the dog, a flicker of something new in his tired eyes. Not just gratitude, but a fragile thread of affection, a hesitant acknowledgement of a burgeoning bond. He bent down and for the first time gently rubbed Asher's ears, a gesture of pure, unadulterated tenderness. "Come on, boy," he murmured, his voice softer than Asher had ever heard it. "Let's get you something proper to eat." And so, Mr. Finch, the solitary street sweeper, and Asher, the lonely street dog, walked away from the park bench together, two figures now intertwined, leaving behind a profound question. Can this unexpected connection truly mend the deep-seated heartache of a man and a dog who have both known only profound loneliness? The unspoken bond between Asher and Mr. Arthur Finch solidified with each passing day. Asher no longer just received food, he shared meals, sometimes even sitting close enough for his dark brown and black fur to brush against Mr. Finch's worn overalls during the old man's breaks. The touch, once tentative, was now natural, a comforting presence. Mr. Finch still didn't talk much, but his grumbles were softer, sometimes even accompanied by a faint hum, a rare melody in his solitary existence. He often found himself instinctively looking for Asher at the start of his route, a unique emotional moment of quiet anticipation that had replaced his usual weary resignation. Honestly, Who needs therapy when you've got a perfectly good street dog to listen to your existential woes? Asher might have quipped if German shepherds were prone to philosophical musings. The spring days lengthened, bringing with them warmer temperatures and more people out on the streets. Mr. Finch, however, seemed to find the heat particularly taxing. Asher noticed the changes. The street sweeper's movements were slower, more labored. He paused more frequently, his hand often going to his chest, and a faint sheen of sweat would appear on his brow even in mild temperatures. His breath, when he exhaled, sometimes came in shallow, ragged gasps. Asher, with his keen canine senses, could smell the subtle shift in Mr. Finch's scent, a faint, sickly tang that spoke of physical distress, a departure from his usual scent of stale coffee and sweeping. Dogs can detect changes in human physiology through scent, including fluctuations in blood sugar, stress hormones, and even certain disease markers, a remarkable ability used in medical detection roles. One scorching afternoon, the sun beat down relentlessly on the city streets, turning the asphalt into a shimmering, oppressive haze. Mr. Finch was midway through his most isolated section of the route, a long, quiet stretch of warehouses and abandoned lots. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust fumes and the baking pavement. Asher, who had been following his human companion from a discreet distance, noticed Mr. Finch's pace slow to a crawl. The rhythmic swish-swish of his broom grew erratic, then stopped altogether. Mr. Finch leaned heavily against a brick wall, his face alarmingly pale, glistening with sweat. He clutched his chest, his knuckles white, and his breath hitched in his throat. His eyes, wide with pain and fear, squeezed shut. He slid slowly down the wall, eventually collapsing onto the hot pavement, his broom clattering beside him. He lay there, unmoving, a solitary figure utterly vulnerable beneath the relentless sun. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and Asher's suddenly frantic heart. This was an unforeseen crisis, a terrifying moment that ripped through the quiet rhythm of their shared routine. Asher barked once, sharply, a desperate call. There was no one around. The warehouse district was deserted, its windows dark, its loading docks empty. Panic flared within Asher. He nudged Mr. Finch's arm with his nose, whimpering anxiously. "Wake up! Please, wake up!" he seemed to plead. Mr. Finch remained unresponsive, his breathing shallow and labored. Asher, instinct overriding his usual caution around humans, began licking Mr. Finch's face, nudging him more forcefully, trying to rouse him. He whined loudly, a mournful, urgent sound that echoed in the empty alley. He knew he had to get help. He looked around frantically. His eyes landed on the distant glimpse of the main road, where cars flashed by, oblivious. He couldn't leave Mr. Finch, not alone like this. But he couldn't stay either. His German shepherd instincts, bred for protection and loyalty, surged. He had to alert someone, anyone. He had to bring help to his human. Dogs, especially those with strong bonds to their owners, can exhibit remarkable problem-solving skills and demonstrate incredible loyalty in emergencies, often attempting to seek help or protect their human companions. It was a desperate gamble, but Asher knew he had no other choice. "All right, buddy, don't you dare give up on me now. I've got this," he might have affirmed, a silent promise to the unconscious man. Asher gave Mr. Finch one last frantic lick, then, with a heavy heart, turned and bolted. He ran like he had never run before, not for food, not from danger, but for a life. He raced towards the main road, barking furiously at every passing car, weaving in and out of traffic, a reckless blur of dark brown and black fur. He ignored the blaring horns, the angry shouts of drivers, his sole focus on getting attention, on breaking through the city's indifference. He ran towards the nearest intersection, where he knew there was a bus stop, hoping, praying, that someone, anyone, would finally see him, truly see him, and understand his desperate plea. Will Asher's courageous, frantic attempt to seek help succeed, or will Mr. Finch's solitude and the city's indifference ultimately prove fatal? The roar of the city traffic was a relentless, terrifying beast, but Asher plunged into it with a desperate courage he didn't know he possessed. He weaved through the speeding cars, his dark brown and black fur a blur against the concrete, barking furiously, his amber eyes fixed on the distant bus stop. Horns blared, tires screeched, and angry shouts followed him, but Asher barely registered them. His sole focus was on Mr. Arthur Finch, lying motionless in the hot, deserted alley, a silent promise burning in Asher's canine heart. I will bring help. He reached the main intersection, a chaotic symphony of traffic lights and impatient drivers. He launched himself into the crosswalk, narrowly avoiding a yellow taxi, then darted onto the sidewalk where a small cluster of people waited at the bus stop. He barked frantically at them, jumping up, pawing at their legs, then looking back wildly towards the alley where Mr. Finch lay. Most people merely recoiled, startled, or shooed him away with annoyed waves of their hands. "Crazy stray," one woman muttered, pulling her bag closer. But one person noticed. Sarah, a young woman with kind eyes and a backpack slung over her shoulder, was waiting for her bus. She saw the desperation in Asher's eyes, the frantic urgency of his barks, so different from a casual demand for food. She noticed his limp, and the way he kept looking back down the alley, a clear invitation. There was a unique emotional moment as Sarah, against her initial hesitation, felt a tug of genuine concern. This wasn't just a stray looking for a handout. This dog was in distress and trying to communicate something vital. "He's trying to tell us something," she murmured to herself, stepping away from the bus stop. Asher, sensing her attention, stopped barking. He whined, then nudged her hand with his nose, looking towards the alley. Sarah hesitated, then, driven by an inexplicable instinct, followed him. "Hey, where are you going?" a man at the bus stop called out, but Sarah was already committed. Asher led the way, looking back periodically, urging her on, ensuring she followed. He ran surprisingly fast, despite his limp, his determination unwavering. Dogs, particularly those with strong protective instincts, can exhibit remarkable intelligence and problem-solving capabilities when trying to alert humans to danger or lead them to an injured party. This natural ability is why they are so effective in search and rescue. They turned into the quiet, scorching alley. The heat shimmered above the asphalt. As they rounded the corner, Sarah gasped. Mr. Finch lay sprawled on the ground, his face pale, his breath shallow. His push broom lay discarded beside him. He looked utterly vulnerable, almost lifeless. Sarah rushed to his side, her voice filled with alarm. "Oh my God! Sir, are you okay?" She quickly fumbled for her phone, dialing emergency services. Asher sat by Mr. Finch's head, nudging him gently with his nose, whimpering softly. He then turned his amber eyes to Sarah, a profound gratitude shining in them, mixed with lingering anxiety. He had done his part. He had brought help. Now it was up to the humans. Sarah, while speaking to the emergency dispatcher, gently reached out and stroked Asher's dark brown and black fur. "Good boy," she whispered. "You're such a good boy." Asher leaned into the touch, a deep, contented rumble vibrating in his chest despite the terrifying circumstances. He had saved his human. Within minutes, the wail of approaching sirens grew louder, piercing the quiet of the alley. An ambulance and a police car arrived, their flashing lights painting the scene in urgent reds and blues. Paramedics rushed to Mr. Finch's side, their movements quick and efficient. They assessed his condition, carefully placing him on a stretcher. Asher watched every movement, a silent sentinel, his loyalty unwavering. He kept close, circling the paramedics, a low whine escaping him if they moved Mr. Finch too abruptly. One of the paramedics, noticing Asher's devotion, smiled gently. "This dog seems very attached to him." Sarah, standing nearby, quickly recounted Asher's heroic actions, how he had literally pulled her from the bus stop to lead her to Mr. Finch. The paramedics and police officers listened, impressed. "Well, I'll be," one of the officers muttered, shaking his head. "A true hero, this one." Asher, hearing the praise, thumped his tail softly against the ground, a modest acknowledgement of his bravery. He wasn't looking for accolades, only for the safety of his human. The crisis was far from over, but Asher had undeniably played a pivotal role in ensuring Mr. Finch had a chance at recovery. Would this selfless act finally bridge the chasm of solitude that had defined both their lives, leading to a profound and lasting bond? The ambulance, its sirens now muted, sped away, carrying Mr. Arthur Finch to the nearest hospital. Asher watched it disappear, a profound anxiety settling over him. He stood in the alley, the scent of antiseptic and worry still clinging to the air, the silence now heavy with uncertainty. Sarah, the young woman who had answered Asher's frantic plea, knelt beside him, gently stroking his dark brown and black fur. "He'll be okay, good boy," she whispered, though her voice held a note of genuine concern. This was a unique emotional moment. Two strangers, united by their concern for a man they barely knew, all thanks to a loyal dog. An hour later, an officer returned. He found Sarah still in the alley with Asher, refusing to leave until she had news. The officer informed them that Mr. Finch was stable. He had suffered a severe heart attack, but thanks to Asher's quick thinking and Sarah's timely call, he was receiving medical attention. "The doctors say another 15-20 minutes, and it might have been too late," the officer relayed, shaking his head in quiet admiration. "That dog, he truly saved his life." Sarah looked at Asher, her eyes filled with awe. She embraced him, burying her face in his scruffy fur. Asher, for his part, leaned into her, a deep, contented sigh escaping him. He had done it. He had brought help. He had protected his human. Dogs, particularly those with a strong attachment to their human companions, often experience significant relief and emotional release once a perceived threat or crisis has passed, often manifesting as calmness or affectionate behavior. Word of Asher's heroism spread like wildfire through Havenwood. Mr. Silas, having been informed by the police, was among the first to visit Mr. Finch at the hospital. He found the old street sweeper pale but conscious, and unusually, talking about Asher. "That dog, Silas," Mr. Finch rasped, his voice weak but clear. "He's something special. He saved me." Mr. Silas, rarely at a loss for words, found himself simply nodding, a lump in his throat. He understood now, not just the heroism, but the deep, unspoken bond that had formed between the solitary man and the loyal dog. The cynicism that had defined Mr. Silas for so long began to erode, replaced by a profound respect. Back in the alley, as evening approached, the townspeople began to gather, drawn by the incredible story. Lily and Mrs. Evelyn Hayes were there, along with other residents who had once ignored Asher. They didn't just look at him as a stray anymore. They saw a hero, a symbol of unwavering loyalty. They brought bowls of fresh water, offered soft blankets, and spoke to him in gentle tones, their faces reflecting newfound admiration. Asher, usually wary of crowds, sensed the change. He accepted their pats, even allowed a few children to cautiously stroke his fur. He was no longer just a shadow. He was finally seen. The local news crew, alerted by the police report, arrived, their cameras flashing. Sarah, initially hesitant, agreed to recount the extraordinary sequence of events, giving full credit to Asher. The footage of Asher leading her to Mr. Finch, the dramatic rescue, and his unwavering vigil by Mr. Finch's side touched hearts across the city. The headline that night was simple and profound: Street Sweeper Saved by His Loyal Stray. This public recognition was a unique emotional moment, not just for Asher, but for the entire community. It forced them to confront their own apathy, their tendency to overlook the silent heroes in their midst. They had dismissed Mr. Finch as merely the grumpy street sweeper and Asher as just another stray. But in a moment of crisis, their true worth had shone through, forging a bond that adversity could not break. The perception of both man and dog transformed overnight. Over the next few days, while Mr. Finch recovered in the hospital, Asher became Havenwood's unofficial guardian. The town rallied around him, ensuring he was fed, cared for, and never alone. Residents, who once wouldn't spare a glance, now offered him affectionate words and gentle touches. The crisis had broken down the walls of indifference, revealing the latent kindness within the community. It was a powerful realization. A simple act of selfless loyalty by a dog had reawakened the empathy of an entire town. But would this newfound appreciation translate into a permanent home for Asher? Or would he remain a hero without a true family when Mr. Finch returned? Weeks turned into a month, and Mr. Arthur Finch slowly recovered, first at the hospital, then at a rehabilitation center. During this time, Asher became Havenwood's unofficial mascot, a living embodiment of the town's reawakened spirit. Mr. Silas, shedding his perpetual cynicism, took on the responsibility of Asher's primary caregiver, ensuring the dark brown and black mutt was fed, groomed, and never felt alone. He'd often find himself muttering fond complaints to Asher. "You know, you're costing me a fortune in kibble, you scamp," as he bought premium dog food, a stark contrast to the stale sandwiches he used to offer. The community, still buzzing from the drama of the robbery and Asher's heroism, rallied around both Mr. Finch and the dog. Cards and flowers poured into the hospital for Mr. Finch, many adorned with drawings of Asher. Lily and Mrs. Evelyn Hayes visited regularly, bringing stories of Asher's playful antics and the progress of the town's revitalization efforts. It was a unique, emotional moment for Mr. Finch, realizing how deeply his life, and Asher's, had become intertwined with the heart of Havenwood. He hadn't just been a solitary street sweeper. He was part of a vibrant, caring community, all thanks to a stray dog. When Mr. Finch was finally strong enough to return home, a small welcoming committee awaited him. Mr. Silas, Mrs. Hayes, Lily, and of course, Asher. The moment Mr. Finch stepped out of the taxi, Asher bounded forward, his tail wagging furiously, a happy whine escaping him. He jumped up, gently placing his paws on Mr. Finch's chest, his amber eyes shining with pure joy and relief. Mr. Finch, tears welling in his eyes, wrapped his arms around Asher, burying his face in the dog's soft fur. "My boy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. It was a reunion years in the making, a culmination of silent routines, small kindnesses, and profound loyalty. Mr. Finch's small apartment, once a sparse reflection of his solitary life, was transformed. The community had rallied, bringing in a comfortable new armchair, a small, soft rug, and most importantly, a plush dog bed for Asher right beside Mr. Finch's own bed. There was a new warmth in the air, a scent of fresh linen mixed with the comforting presence of a beloved dog. Asher, who had known only the cold, hard streets, now had a true home, a place of unconditional love and unwavering comfort. Dogs are naturally inclined to form strong attachments and thrive in environments that offer consistency, security, and affectionate interaction. leading to significant improvements in their overall well-being and behavior. Asher's transformation was astounding. His limp, though still present, was less noticeable. His body filled out, and his coat, regularly groomed by Mr. Silas and Lily, shone with health. He was no longer a cautious shadow, but a confident, happy companion. He would still accompany Mr. Finch on parts of his sweeping route, trotting proudly beside him, no longer needing to scavenge but simply enjoying the shared moments. He'd even playfully snap at the dust bunnies Mr. Finch swept into piles, making the old man chuckle.
Still trying to do my job, eh, Menace?
Mr. Finch would grumble, a fond smile on his face. The concept of a soul keeper took on profound meaning for Mr. Finch. Asher wasn't just a pet. He was the living embodiment of Mr. Finch's rediscovered joy, the catalyst for his return to health and connection. Asher sensed Mr. Finch's moods, offering quiet comfort when the old man was tired, or initiating playful nudges when he seemed melancholic. He filled the silence that had once defined Mr. Finch's life with a profound presence, a steady, loving heart. This bond, forged in adversity and deepened by shared experience, was something neither of them had ever expected. The city, which had once felt so indifferent, now seemed to embrace them both. Passers-by would often stop to greet Mr. Finch, asking about his health and praising Asher. Children would flock to Asher, eager to pet the hero dog. Mr. Finch, once a man who avoided eye contact, now found himself engaging in brief, genuine conversations. His transformation was as remarkable as Asher's, shedding years of solitude and bitterness. He had found a family, not of blood, but of circumstance and unwavering loyalty. Will their story become a lasting legend, inspiring others to find hope and connection in the most unexpected places? A true testament to how a street sweeper found his soul keeper? The city's rhythm, once a symphony of indifference, now played a different tune for Mr. Arthur Finch and Asher. Their lives, once defined by solitude, were now a testament to profound connection. Mr. Finch, no longer just the weary street sweeper, moved with a lighter step, his daily route now a familiar dance with his faithful companion. Asher, the dark brown and black mutt who had known only the harshness of the streets, walked with a confident gait, his tail often wagging, his amber eyes reflecting the deep contentment of a truly loved dog. Their bond was a living legend in Havenwood. People often saw them, the old man with his broom moving methodically, and the German shepherd mix trotting patiently by his side, occasionally nudging his hand for an ear scratch. It wasn't just a man and his dog. It was a testament to loyalty, resilience, and the power of unexpected companionship. Mr. Finch would still grumble about the relentless city dust, but now his complaints were tinged with humor, often directed at Asher. "You think you're helping, don't you, sneaking up on those rogue napkins?" He'd muse, watching Asher playfully bat at a piece of discarded paper. Asher, of course, would merely thump his tail, a clear sign of his assistance. Asher had truly become Mr. Finch's soul keeper. He sensed the subtle shifts in the old man's moods, offering quiet comfort on weary days, or nudging his hand with his head when he seemed lost in thought. He filled the silence of Mr. Finch's small apartment with a profound, comforting presence, turning a solitary dwelling into a warm, inviting home. The once gruff Mr. Finch now found himself talking to Asher for hours, sharing memories, observations, and even his quiet dreams for the revitalized Havenwood. Dogs are remarkable listeners. Their non-judgmental presence and intuitive understanding of human emotions can provide profound psychological comfort and reduce feelings of isolation in their human companions. This unique emotional moment of shared intimacy was the core of their transformed lives. Their story continued to inspire. The local news often featured updates on Mr. Finch's recovery and Asher's enduring role in the community. Other towns facing similar struggles with neglect and apathy looked to Havenwood as an example of how a single act of courage, amplified by the love for an animal, could spark a wave of positive change. The once forgotten street sweeper and the loyal stray became symbols of hope, proving that even the most overlooked individuals, human or animal, possess the power to transform lives and communities. Asher's life of luxury wasn't defined by grand estates or endless treats, but by the consistent warmth of a loving home, a full belly, and the unwavering presence of his human. He had his own soft bed, regular vet checkups, and the freedom to explore his city, always with the knowledge that he had a safe haven and a human who adored him. Mr. Finch, for his part, had found not just a companion, but a purpose beyond sweeping. He volunteered at the newly reopened community center, sharing his story, his experiences, and often a quiet moment with Asher, who would sit patiently by his side. The journey from a solitary existence on the streets to a life as a beloved soul-keeper was nothing short of incredible. Asher had given Mr. Finch a reason to smile, a reason to engage, a reason to live beyond his own quiet grief. And Mr. Finch had given Asher the greatest gift of all, a true home, a family, and unconditional love. Their legacy was not just in the cleaned streets or the revitalized buildings, but in the profound, quiet bond that showed Havenwood, and indeed the world, that kindness always prevails, and that sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the simplest acts of compassion towards a single, loyal dog. The soft glow of a street lamp filters through Mr. Finch's apartment window, casting a peaceful light on the sleeping forms within. Asher is curled tightly on his plush bed, a low, contented rumble vibrating in his chest, his dark brown and black fur rising and falling with each steady breath. Beside him, Mr. Finch sleeps soundly in his armchair, a rare, soft smile playing on his lips. The quiet hum of the city is a distant, comforting sound. All the loneliness, all the hardship has faded into the background. They are together, safe, cherished, two souls forever intertwined by an incredible journey of transformation and unwavering love. Script end. Good night.